be mindful of what are the traps, what are the dangers, what are the elements of a success or potential failure of the change initiative.
Welcome to The Way Change Works, the podcast from the Association of Change Management Professionals. I'm your host, Greg Voeller. Our show features global leaders telling stories about creating lasting and meaningful change in organizations, communities, and lives. These stories reflect our belief at ACMP that beyond the technology, processes, and structures that are key elements in our profession, true change is only possible through the positive transformation of human behavior and beliefs. In this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleague and longtime friend Magdalena Mook, who is CEO of the International Coaching Federation, or ICF. ICF is the leading global organization for professional coaches as they advance their learning and their credentials. The conversation between Magda and myself will explore places where change management and professional leadership coaching intersect. We'll talk about how these very related professions complement each other, support each other, and how they can interact with each other, all with the mutual belief and goal that we are changing beliefs and behaviors amongst the organizations and the people in those organizations that we serve. Magdalena's experience and leadership are invaluable as we explore these questions and improve our capacity and capability to grow the effectiveness of leaders and organizations at all levels. I'm also excited that throughout our conversation, we're going to be referring to a soon-to-be-released white paper that focuses on the power and the convergence of coaching and change management.
Coaches often refer to themselves as change agents. And that's true. And yet, seeing that there is another discipline that can support them in understanding the change process, especially in organization, that can help them help their clients see the change throughout all its phases, be mindful of what are the traps, what are the dangers, what are the elements of a success or potential failure of the change initiative. And also, I think that's another parallel to what we see in coaching, and that's the trend of systemic coaching. In other words, organizations that have strong coaching cultures tend to offer coaching to the entire enterprise, not just to single individuals. Team coaching, group coaching, that's becoming much more prevalent. And I think that the coaches also realize that when they are engaged in a throughout the enterprise, it is supporting change. And again, knowing, understanding, appreciating that there is a process and it's really well documented and well researched that supports change, allows them to support individuals or teams that they are working with, so that those two processes of coaching and change management are fully integrated.
And that's so completely awesome. And just to bring back to light for some of you, back in 2019, early 2020, we started launching joint webinar sessions that were providing expertise that Magda and her team provided from ICF and that we were proud to also provide from ACMP. And those were received very well. From there, we've continued to shape experiences at our virtual conferences that have taken place over these last several years, where last year we started at the ACMP Global Conference, an innovation lab focused again on the convergence of change and coaching. And we took that through then all the way through your virtual
Right.
Converge conference last year, so we could really bookend that focus on innovation. And then the last thing I'll just sort of describe in this journey is what our joint task force is focusing on right now is the framing, the development of a first, I think, of several white papers that will come forward in terms of really further specifying and focusing in on this convergence opportunity. So first and foremost, just we're so thankful and proud of our task force and everybody who's contributed to all of that along the way. So with that big lead in, I'd love to just hear from you, Magda. What are some of the things that you sort of experienced and maybe what we would both define as watershed moments in that journey as we progress forward here?
Yeah, I cannot say enough good about the joint work between the two organizations, and again, neither being territorial or fearful. More so, I think we're, as you said, this is a watershed moment because we're building something that's stronger than each of the applications alone. I think that as we started working on the comparing the ICF competencies and the standards of ACMP, we saw this, what do we call them, the intersection points.
Yes.
And they are many, there are plenty. And again, I think that this is so important that this new knowledge is supporting both professions. Change management professionals, when they understand better how coaching approach can facilitate the conversation, how creating goals, keeping accountability, but really even going into the specific goals, how it can completely change the buy-in into the project, how it can address the resistance to change. These are the things that I think maybe change professionals were not as aware of as potential application of coaching. And again, vice versa, coaches can see that there is a very specific process that needs to be followed in order for the change initiative to be successful. So although there is always a little bit of wiggle room and the stretch space, it is very, I think it is very important that both sides of that spectrum understand their respective roles and also see where they can intersect. And at the end, all that we are for as professionals is the success of the organization or of the people we're working with. So if we can bring another tool to our repertoire, and especially if we can work together hand in hand, why wouldn't we? And that's I think a watershed moment, that these are two professions that are supporting each other in a way that creates a better outcome for our clients.
I love that, Magda. And I'll just, respond to, yes, we very much have a mutual focus, a mutual goal, in terms of those organizations and people we serve. I can say from an ACMP perspective, what we have gained from this is an understanding of the approach that ICF takes in order to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And you were starting to get at that. One tangible example is that ACMP has not yet put together that focused on really what we would identify as key competencies of a change professional. And we have learned that from ICF and how we think about that then going forward as part of our overall approach to advancing the profession as well too. And what does that mean then for our credential, our learning, our certification focus then as well too. So I think it's just been awesome in all of that then as well too.
It is. And the something that we hear all the time, the only what is the saying about change being the only constant, right?
Yes.
So our members and their clients, of course, often, if not always, put change as one of the reason why they are seeking coaching, because the pace of change is so fast, because change brings unknown, because change can be a little scary, because leaders in particular are expected to lead in the face of something that they don't understand or they can't quite grasp. So there is the resistance of a leader, her or himself, that may be a question at hand. In our joint study, that's another. Well, that was actually maybe a beginning of our great relationship, was that ICF created a study with Human Capital Institute on coaching and change management, or that intersection of coaching and change management. And I think that was exactly this huge aha moment, that change happens at so many levels within the organization, and again, application of coaching can support it in a great way. I think that study identified three elements of a success or a failure of the change initiative, and one of them was resistance, one of them was leadership, and one of this was communication, right? And again, all three points, these are one of the most cited reasons why individuals seek a support of a coach. So that was a match made in heaven indeed, and we didn't even have to discuss it much further. We already knew that that's some place where we can help each other.
And I think that's just a great connection point for moving our conversation, Magda, to now a very practical, tactical focus. And I would just share with our audience that is, the intent of what we'll be jointly releasing as this white paper coming forward here in the next in really the near future. And that white paper is all about how we look at the power of both change management and professional coaching together.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I had a great opportunity here within the last few weeks to work with the joint task force as we were looking at the white paper, the working draft of it. And what I loved, one of the conversations we got onto is how are we placing this into the reality of today?
Mm-hmm.
And, you just talked about 3 evergreen topics around resistance, around leadership, and around communication that are present in every transformation.
Yeah.
And I shared with the team, I had the great honor of going to a recent Gartner conference here in October, and just brought forward some data that also too, I think, amplified and verified those points. A couple of those pieces that I think are relevant to our audience here. Number one, Gartner, from their research, and again, I think we're all fairly familiar with Gartner research, they're describing right now that employee worry and stress, 2 different factors, are at the highest points ever. That from their longitudinal studies on that. And then the second point that relates to that, and this I think is a door for how we look at coaching, how we look at change, is that employees, they are reluctant to go to their HR people more and more, to their HR lead, their HR business partner. And then by default, they will go to their people manager, but they will also do so reluctantly. And so what does that mean to us as change professionals, as professional coaches? It's this need to how to equip, enable leaders at all levels to be responsive, to be empathetic to the current needs of people in the workplace today. And so I just would love to hear your perspectives on that and sort of the reality of today's opportunity, from your lens, from your viewpoint, Magda.
Yeah, Greg, you're just pointing into yet another very significant trend that started, frankly, before the pandemic, but I think during the pandemic was maybe amplified. And it is a growing number of leaders and managers who are receiving training in using coaching skills. This is not a training to become a professional coach. This is not to expect a manager or a leader to be a coach to their teams. They have other jobs. They are managers of those teams. But to be, exactly as you said, to be more empathetic, to be more vulnerable, to listen more, to ask for opinions, to bring the buy-in, especially with younger generations. That's, when we tell them what to do, that's almost a guarantee they won't do it, right? So how to bring that buy-in and how to lower the fear of change while, as you said, people are already stressed and maxed out. So according to our research with PricewaterhouseCoopers, that field of managers and leaders using coaching skills is one of the fastest growing part of the coaching continuum, from professional coach to somebody using coaching skills. In fact, many organizations are investing significant resources in order for their managers and leaders to train in that field. And that has also huge there is a huge reason for it, because as you said, these managers and leaders, they need to be responsive to their teams, but they need to resource themselves as well. So to be a good manager in a change initiative, well, we just said leadership, be a good leader. Well, all right. So who very recently I wrote an article about who has the leaders back, right? Because everybody looks into the leader. You said people are not going to HR as much. Who resources the leader? So some of those skills of coaching approach is allowing leaders to build resilience in themselves, and also allows them to have a different style conversation with their teams, which is more welcoming and something that anymore I think is expected rather than being a curiosity and a novelty.
Magda, that was such a great way for us to talk about maybe one or two examples, that are real life that benefit from the convergence of both coaching and change. And I'll tee up one, and I'll keep this sort of at a somewhat generic level, but also though useful and instructive for our audience. It was a change effort that I was part of, actually much more of what would be defined as a transformation, as an organization was looking to completely change its operations focus and classified under that a world-class excellence type of an approach. And that meant that really processes, systems, structures, skills needed to be changed across the organization, to make that happen. And our sponsor, the lead for that, very much understood all of the components, very sort of engineering-like type of an approach to that, where that individual, though, would be the first to tell you, but he wouldn't do this publicly. He would do this privately with me. He would start to say, I'm at a loss sometimes in terms of how I really need to inspire and influence these people, to work in completely, well, and I'm not overstating that, to work in completely different ways in order to move forward. And so that was the cue for me. That was the cue for me to say, you know what? That's an opportunity to connect with somebody who can help that leader, that individual, think about how he approaches this. I don't feel qualified in that space by any stretch, but I know folks that have that capacity to take a leader to a next level, for that leader to be thoughtful about his or her approach then in really guiding people from a true behavioral perspective. And I think this connects to the change piece, is always you're recognizing the points of resistance that come forward in their people. So Magda, I'd love to hear a story from you, or an example where, kind of entering the door from a coaching perspective, and what were the implications and the needs and the opportunities more from a broader transformation and change perspective?
Yeah, I think that there are such a great stories that the listeners to the podcast can take a closer look. And I would like to point you to a couple of things. One is experiencecoaching.com. This is a series of short videos that talk from the perspective of the client. And you can hear it, that in many cases, it was a change initiative. Sometimes people, I think, may not realize, but say somebody being promoted to a different job, that is a change initiative. That changes a lot of things for a lot of people, especially if we're talking about most senior levels of the organization. The other part that I would like to offer to our listeners is the program that we have at ICF called PRISM Award. This is the award given to the organizations and institutions that apply coaching as a strategic initiative within their overarching strategy for the organization. And again, when you read the case studies, you can see that it always was some major change or transformation, as you call it, that was creating pressures that were simply not recognized before, and coaches came in to help the change process. And sometimes it was a little bit the other way around. The coach would read much like you said with your client, that I don't know. They would say, like, are you working with change management professionals? Because it seems like maybe there are too many things happening and not enough structure to it. So that does not take away from coaching, but let's bring it to the higher level structural look into what needs to happen in the whole organization for that transformation to be successful. And last thing I say is, in ICF 3 years ago, we introduced a major change initiative. And yes, we worked with coaches, all right, believe me. And we also worked with change management professionals to help us organize ourselves And again, it was just perfect storm because that was exactly at the beginning of the pandemic, which created some really unusual circumstances. And being able to work with both change managers and coaches, I think allowed us to almost 3 years into it being really quite happy with the outcomes.
Well, for sure, Magda, the need for this mutual convergence of coaching and change has probably never been as vital and needed as it is today. Just one other Gartner data, I kind of got a lot of Gartner data in my head over these last few weeks, but I just would share with our audience, and I think it's instructive for all of us, is that Gartner in their survey of HR leaders around the world, CHROs, the top two priorities as their organizations enter 2023 are growing the effectiveness of their leaders and managers at all levels
Mm-hmm.
and strengthening their focus on organizational change management and how to drive that. That is a invitation for all of us on this discussion here in terms of how do we help those organizations get to those next levels as well too.
Yeah. I think it is like you organize the best team for the project, right? And it is not that it can be only one approach, but they can be supportive of each other. And this is what the white paper I think will be really so instrumental in showing that there are these different points where coaching make perfect sense to be a part of a change management process. I think that the task force exactly identify these four places where coaching can mitigate the biggest change management challenges, and that was supporting sponsors to be effective. And we also know it in coaching. If there is not a strong support executive sponsorship for coaching, those initiatives are not very successful. Then we already talk a lot about it, stakeholder resistance. And then the third part was faster adoption of new processes, tools, behaviors, and culture. That was also something that the HCI study pointed to, that when asked what was most effective, the responses was coaching, 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 coaching in change management, while when the question was, and what's most offered? Oh, classroom traditional learning, right? So again, that's just another reason why coaching and change management go hand in hand. And finally, we also talk about a little bit building employee resilience. So the task force is doing phenomenal job of trying to be very explicit into when there is a good reason, and it does not mean that it always has to happen that way, right? But when there are these points where it's at least prudent to think about bringing a coach to the change management initiative.
That's so awesome, and it is spot on for sure. So, Magda, as we bring this to a close, I'm going to suggest that we both have a final statement, and I'd like to have you go first. But here's what how I'd like to shape this: is Magda, I'd like to give you an opportunity to speak to those individuals listening here that would sort of characterize themselves as really change professionals. What would be sort of a key takeaway you'd want to give folks that have in various ways they're a change professional, maybe anywhere from early career to a very seasoned professional? What would be something that you really would want a change professional to take away from the lens of coaching?
Mhm. I think the first to say is that, and Maria Dorby from ACMP and I used to joke about it, that we're cousins.
Yes.
Change management and coaching, we are cousins. We are distinct, we are very strong in our own right, and we can work together for the better outcome of our clients. So first invitation is, don't be afraid of coaching, bringing coaching to change management. Coaches are not out there to steal your project, they are there to help your project. From the individual perspective, learn about coaching a little bit more so you know for yourself when to apply it best, when to suggest it perhaps to your clients, and how to talk to your other change management colleagues about the benefit of bringing coaching to your initiative. And, we started seeing a little bit of, I don't know if I would call it a trend yet, but the little undercurrent of many change practitioners also getting the credentials in coaching. So holding double credentials or certifications, depending on the organization, what we call it. And again, it is because that expands their own capability and skill set to be exactly where they need to be for their clients. I will close with the something that my colleague recently said. We all know, so all business coaches, executive coaches, organizational coaches, you name it, right? And when asked what kind of coaching she does, she got quiet for a second, and then she said, "I am a coach who meets my client where they need me." Exactly. And I think change management and coaching together can do just that, meeting the client where they need us.
That's so awesome. And it is spot on for sure. And I would just, in closing, a very quick summary, I would say ditto to everything that Magda, you just shared, as I would speak to those of you listening here that are a professional coach and have gone through going through your journey in that space. And I would just encourage you. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to those of you. I'm grateful for the expertise that you bring, and just ask you to continue to partner with us in this very holistic way. This very holistic way to recognize that what we're doing is that we are impacting people, their beliefs, their behaviors, and really their outlook in the world as well too. And what an incredibly important sort of purpose and mission that we mutually have then in that space as well too. I know we typically do that, or most often do that, through the lens of an organizational aspect of that, but we're impacting people and we're impacting people's lives, and that's an incredible opportunity and responsibility that we jointly share. So we're excited to be on that journey with you as well too. Magda, it has been such a treat to have yet another conversation with you, my friend, in all of this. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for you and your organization's continued partnership, and we look forward to next steps here in the future.
Thank you so much, Greg. Always pleasure. And I'm excited. I know you are, about this white paper, or first of many, hopefully coming out, and we can continue this very, very important dialogue, and then becoming even closer.
So, thank you again.
Thanks.
To learn more about the work of Magda and the International Coaching Federation, check out its website, coachingfederation.org, or their profiles on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. To learn more about the Association of Change Management Professionals, especially our membership benefits, professional development offerings, and certification program, go to acmpglobal.org. And now on our website, you'll find a link to ACMP Connect, our virtual collaboration platform, which has an ongoing discussion on the integration of coaching and change management. If you're not yet a subscriber to The Way Change Works, please add us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to tell your friends about us as well. As always, thanks for listening, and thank you for leading how change works.